For the last 4 Sundays, we've been exploring together one of the most powerful biblical metaphors for the spiritual life. We are clay, and God is our potter. The pastor of First Christian Reformed Church in Detroit, Ben Van Aragon, says that it's really insightful and helpful for you and I to remember that what we are, in essence, is clay. Because clay is both a delicate and forgiving artistic medium. It is easily deformed, and it is just as easily reformed. And in that is probably the story and course of each life represented here. Seasons of falling apart and seasons of being put back together. He goes on to say that really the only wrong thing you can do with clay is let it dry out or let it harden in place. This too is so insightful, that what God wants to do in our life is not let us dry out, become arid, shallow, detached. And it's also not to leave us alone, so that we harden into place as we currently are. We're going to keep this metaphor in view today, but we're going to change the who of it and the what of it, and we'll get to that in a moment. But before we do, let me say that the last 2 Sundays we've talked about how God has made you with certain graces to give other people, and also that God is shaping us into a community. And you've given great feedback by way of these 2 bulletin inserts that we passed out. If you didn't see those bulletin inserts, you can get them on the welcome counter in the narthex, and we would love to hear from you because it's giving us good direction on what to pursue over this coming school year. Let's begin today here. How do you feel about the future? Some of how you feel about the future is predictable. Some of it is based on age. The younger you are, then you tend to be more optimistic about the future. The older you are, the more pessimistic you tend to be about the future. Now, this is free and an aside. If you're 70, you're also the happiest possible age. Did you know that? So apparently if you're young, you're optimistic about the future, but you're not really happy. As the father of an 18 and almost 21-year-old, that sounds about right. How about this? If you cannot meet your physical needs, if you are economically unstable, you tend to be less optimistic about the future. This makes sense, right? Those of us who have the privilege of economic stability have the time and the ease to think about what's to come years from now or even decades from now. If you're worried about how you're going to pay your rent, you can't do that. Some of how you view the future is driven by your personality, your specific personality type. Gathered here today in the room or watching online are planners, people who try to foresee the future and plan for where they want it to go. This is a good thing until you try to control the future. And then it leaves you dissatisfied. The opposite kind of personality type is one that tries to live in the moment, be fully present in the here and now, because the here and now is all we've got. This too is a good thing, until the future sneaks up on you like a bad surprise and is not what you hoped it would be. Psychological research would tell you that human beings have an inexact, I dare say misguided, relationship with the future. Consider what's called effective forecasting. If I ask you to imagine a trip that you hope to take within the coming year, or what you're going to do with your vacation time in the coming year, you will predictably overestimate how happy it is going to make you. Now, the opposite is also true. If I ask you to imagine what it would be like in the next year to lose your job or some other unforeseen trouble, you will consistently overestimate how painful it will be. See, really, the future is just more than you realize. How about this? Human beings consistently have a lack of what psychologists call self-continuity. We think that our present self is the only self that exists, and our future self is an illusion. This is why, when you talk to young people about saving for retirement, or you talk to people about eating healthier, exercising more, giving them all the facts, citing medical studies, showering them with data, doesn't work because they don't believe their future self actually exists. You know what does work? Have them sit down and imagine or visualize in as much detail as they can who they will be at 65 or 70 when they retire, and what they would like that life to look like. Far and again, exponentially more so, that kind of visualization works to change behavior because it makes the future real. The Bible has a lot to say about the future. And really, cover to cover, has a great deal to say about specific behaviors, attitudes, priorities, and perspectives that can shape a fruitful future. If you will, the Bible tells you that the future is clay, and that you and I, in some sense, can be the potter of that clay. Today we're going to talk about two passages in the Psalms. In the Thursday email that goes out this week, I'm going to write about a few more places in the Bible that do this same kind of thing. So first, consider with me verses 8 and 9 of Psalm 32. The psalmist here speaking for God. I, God, will instruct you and teach you the way you should go. I will counsel you with my eye upon you. Do not be like a horse or a mule without understanding, whose temper must be curbed with bit and bridle, or it will wander away from its owner. What's maybe most surprising about this passage is when the instruction will happen. Did you catch the tense of the verb? See, in the Old Testament, God He codified His wisdom and truth for Israel in the law. So a lot of the Old Testament, like the prophets, are looking back at the law and saying to the present generation of Israel, you're not doing that. This is not how that verse reads, though. The instruction in this verse has not been given yet. The promise here is that God will instruct us. Second phrase, that His eye is always on you and me, so that at the right moment, He can give us the understanding or perspective that we need. Fascinating. What this means then is that currently in your life, who you are, how you see things, is inadequate for the future. You get that? That your current perspective on things may be doing you well right now, but it will not be enough tomorrow, or in a year, or in a decade. God will need to step in and instruct you as the future unfolds. I find this freeing because it means then that feeling confused or unsure of what to do in situations should be normal, because the self that I bring into that moment is inadequate for that moment and requires divine outside instruction in order to make it through. So, can you and I, when we think about our future, say to ourselves, I am open to what I don't currently know. I am open to seeing things differently than I currently do. If we don't take on that posture, we are probably foregoing this promise of instruction. Can you see that this would be helpful for us as a church? To say to one another, God has been faithful to us for decades now. And in fact, the story of our church, like many churches, is a story of God faithfully giving us the wisdom and provision we needed as we needed it. But this will also be the story of our future. The KirkWood of the past cannot be the KirkWood of the future. The KirkWood of the present cannot be the KirkWood of the future. Why? Because it will be inadequate for what is to come. And the only way that you and I as a church family can make our way forward into the future is to be open to instruction that shapes and changes us from who we currently are. Now, how do you forego this? How do you say, nope, I don't want God to be my guide, tutor, instructor, and change my mind or open my eyes wider over the course of the years to come? Well, the second half of the passage tells you. And we could say this in a more PG-13 kind of way. Let me say it to you the way the verse does. All you got to do is act like a donkey. Just act like a donkey, an untamed, unbridled, wild donkey. One who is undomesticated, wanders away, breaks down the fences and the gates. One who, in the end, is ill prepared for the future. When in your life have you behaved like a donkey? My mom used to tell me from time to time, I love that I'm admitting this in public because I am sure going to hear it from you at some point in the future. My mom used to say to me on occasion, Chris, I'm determined. You're just stubborn. That's me being a donkey. Some of those painful episodes in your life are when you wouldn't release your expectations that you had, the perspectives on an issue or a subject that you had, and you fought like mad to hold on to it. If you will, you behaved like a donkey. And instead, what God is asking you to do here is to be open to future instruction that surprises you and changes you. You see that? This is how we take the clay of the future in our hands and we shape it. We will become perpetual learners at Jesus' feet, and we will allow him to change us into what we are not currently. And we will decidedly say together, we are not donkeys. 5 chapters later, Psalm 37, verses 37 and 38. Watch the blameless closely and pay attention to the upright. There will be a future for the peaceable. But those who break God's law will be altogether destroyed, and the future of the wicked shall be cut off. What you don't know, but you'll get a chance to do in the email that goes out tomorrow, is the entirety of Psalm 37 reads this way. It is built upon the kind of contrast you see in these two verses. The rest of Psalm 37 will say things like, do good and have a future. Be righteous and have a future. Be faithful and have a future. Be meek and have a future. Be generous and have a future. Be blameless and have a future, and so on and so on and so forth. It's exemplified in verse 25 of Psalm 37, when the psalmist says, I have been young and now I am old, and one thing is sure, I have never seen the righteous forsaken. So what do you see here about how we can shape the future like clay? Well, do you see that generally speaking, there is a relationship between character and the future? If you will, character is destiny, and so is the lack of character. Character is the foundation on which you will build your future life. A lack of character means there is no foundation upon which to build it. Your present character is the road on which you will travel into the future. Your lack of present character is a pothole that awaits you, into which you will fall. Here, Psalm 37 sounds an awful lot like the wisdom literature of the Old Testament, as well as certain places in the New. Character is destiny, and so is the lack thereof. What this means then, in part, is that if you're struggling to feel hopeful about the future in your own life, or maybe about our church, the advice here of the psalmist is turn your attention to character. If you don't know what to do at the present, or if the future seems scary or uncertain, one thing you can do: turn your attention to character. And seek to grow in being a person who is upright or peaceable, as these two verses say. Or elsewhere in the psalm, seek to grow in generosity and meekness, because by so doing you lay a foundation on which the future can be built. You lay a road on which you can travel to a fruitful future. How about this? I'll make you this deal as a pastor to you, the congregation. There are many things about the future that you and I do not know. There are maybe even many things about the future that might be scary to us. We don't know what KirkWood will be like 10 years from now. You're right. But you know what you and I can do? Grow in our Christian character now. And in so doing, we prepare ourselves for the future to come. Or maybe even more so, if we do that now, a future can be built upon our efforts and formation now. This is what's required. Character is not optional. Churches think on occasion that what will draw people in, what will fill their sagging attendance and offering plate, is a big show on stage, a great preacher, huge programs. I am sorry, that's very American and not particularly Christian. What I can tell you from this passage and others like it is that if you and I are deeply committed to our own character formation, and we treat each other that way, and we are known for being that kind of people out in our community and in our job place and in the world, I know that a future can be built upon a church like that. Character is destiny, and so is the lack thereof. There are many churches that you know that are struggling or that are closing, and they think it's because they've gotten old. Maybe. They think it's because they're in a community where the demographics have shifted, and now everybody drives into the church, and the people in the area are not like them. Well, maybe those are good and valid questions. Let me also offer they need to do a character examination. Are they marked by meekness? Generosity? Are they people of peace with one another? There is no future without these things. You see that? Let me finish here. Verses from Isaiah the prophet, chapter 43. This is the opening of the chapter. The great prophet writes, "Do not fear, for I, God, have redeemed you. I have called you by name, and you are mine. When you pass through deep waters, I will be with you, so the rivers will not overwhelm you. When you walk through fire, you will not be burned, and the flame will not consume you." Sometimes you can see the deep waters coming, and you've got to go through them. Sometimes the fire is not one that you yourself lit. And sometimes the fire is something that you yourself lit. And in all cases, the promise is that God will be with us. In our highs and in our lows, at our best and at our worst, God will be with us. There's a story that's told by an old Jewish rabbi that goes very simply like this. A student one day tried to trip him up in their synagogue class. The student raised his hand and said, "Good rabbi, I will give you a gold coin if you can tell me where God is." And the rabbi paused and replied, "I will give you a gold coin if you can tell me where God isn't." God awaits us in the future. As we can, let us take the future in our hands and shape it like clay. And God awaits for us as we do. Now, I want you to do something very practical today about the future, your prayers and your hopes for it. When you came in today, in your bulletin, there should have been 2 envelopes and 2 white cards. As Tina plays, what I would like you to do is I would like you to write a hope or a prayer for your side of the card. Once you've done that, put it in the envelope, seal it, write your name legibly, first and last, on the front of the envelope. Because what I'm going to do is collect them at the end of the service, and 6 months from now, you're going to get them back. And we're going to see how much your future self and our future church looks like our hopes and prayers for ourselves and our congregation that we write today. So take a moment as Tina plays, put a hope or a prayer for yourself on one side, a hope or a prayer for KirkWood on the other. Once you've done that, put it in the envelope, seal it, write your name first and last on the front of the envelope, and just hold on to it till the end of the service. Okay, Tina, go ahead. So let's finish this time of thinking about how we shape our own futures by offering some one-sentence prayers for our own future or our church's future. Choir, you can come on up and get in place while we do this. Choir, if you want to offer one of these one-sentence prayers, you can. What Jim has asked in the back is take a few steps forward toward this mic right here, and then we'll be sure to pick you up on the live stream. So there are 2 mics in the back that are wireless and will come to you. All you have to do to participate is just raise your hand. And all you have to do is pray one sentence. Just one sentence. You can do this. One sentence about something about your own future or something about our church's future. And after we do this for a little while, I will finish by praying. So go ahead and raise your hand and the mics will make their way around to you. Or if you're in the choir, you can step forward a little bit and that mic right there will pick you up. Just raise your hand, one sentence. What would you like to pray?
I pray that the church becomes multiracial in its membership.
Thank you, Bob. All right. Go ahead. You can even, while we're getting the mic to one person, someone else can raise their hand. Go ahead.
I pray that more people return to service every weekend.
Someone else? Go ahead, Mary. Just step forward a little bit.
I pray that we may be one.
Someone else?
Keep the joy.
Thank you, Skip. Someone else? Yeah, there we go.
I pray for understanding and guidance.
What else? What do you hope for yourself? What do you hope for our church?
I pray that we can learn to listen more and love more.
Thank you.
I pray for a more tolerant nation.
Thanks, Luke. Someone else. Great stuff.
I pray that we can bless more.
Anyone else?
I pray that we can reach out further and further.
Thanks, Pepper. Any more? Yep, we got one more.
The church will guide our steps in the right way.
Thank you. Did I see one more? Yep, okay, one more and then I'll conclude.
I pray that individually and as a church, we wake up each day trying to figure out how we're going to make a difference in someone's life.
Thank you. All right, pray with me. Lord God, these are our hopes for our own lives and for our life together as a congregation. Receive them with the spirit in which we gave it. We will do our utmost to take the clay of the future into our hands and shape it. We will be the change in the world that we want to see. But we need you to be there in the future waiting for us. giving us what we need and what we need to hear at the exact moment that we need it. Keep our hearts and our ears open. This we ask together. Amen.